variable components. In GGC, next one is maybe let's call it as content. Now I will create a service. Right, so now we have. So let's open this in our Visual Studio Code. So you have different components, and we also have something called as work service. Now what I do is we added an array called as rows with some data. Now what I do is I go here. Let's take out all this. Let's call this as understanding the concept of services. Now let's call app header. Div style equals to border 3px solid red. Dotted. Instead of header, I call the content. Now what I do is in both header and content, I would like to call roles. So what I do is I inject the dependency that means what is the service we created? Data service. In ng on init. So here what I do is I'll create an array roles list. I'll initialize it to array, and then what we do is this dot roles list is equals to this dot src dot roles. It says it is not assignable to type never. string array. So I should declare it as a string array. And then in the header component, welcome to header component. ng for is equals to let I of roles list we say I. Same thing I'll repeat in content as well. Content component. Inject that, basically import that. That's it. Alright, so now let's run this application. You see, that data can be accessed in header component. That data can be accessed in which component, guys?
Content component.
Content component. Header and content, they both are not parent child. They are two different components. But still, the data can be accessed in both header as well as content. Now, let's go and make changes such a way that I'll make some changes to that data from my header component. Add new role, input type equals to text, ng model is equals to add role. If I am using ng model, I should import which module, guys? Forms module. I should import forms module. Now let's place a button. Let's place a button. Add. This is wrong, right? So I thought I was getting a button. New role. So in the header component, I'll declare new role as an array and then add role. On click of add role, so we should read the data from this new role and we should push it to which one, guys?
roles.
ro- but what if user don't enter any data, and what if he clicks on add guys? That will be null, right? Either null or empty. So in Angular, you have an option, guys. This dot new row. I'll debug and I'll show you what this is doing. New role. Then we'll say this dot srvc dot roles dot push this dot new role, right? And then we say this dot roles list is equals to this dot srvc dot roles. Let me comment this. Let me debug and show you what is going to happen. Right, so control P. What was the component? Header component. Let's place a breakpoint. I don't enter any data. I click on this add. Now what is this new role? New role holds empty. If it is empty, do you want to insert that to your array?
No.
Ideally you should not. So usually what code do you write in JavaScript or any language? You should check if this new role is not undefined, if this new role is not equals to null, and if this new role is not equals to empty, then you run this. So in TypeScript, without you doing all that, if you just say this new dot means this dot new role, you see it will not go inside. It will not add. If this has the data, then only it will go inside. If this has no data, or if this is undefined, or if this is empty, it will not go inside. Alright, so this will not happen. Now, let me add a new role, delivery manager. Click on this add. It has the data. As it has the data, it will go inside. You see? You don't have to write this because you have already done that initialization. And then you see here, that change you can see in header component, as well as that change you can see in which component?
Content.
Content component. You make change to the service data in one component, that change can be seen in all the components wherever you are using that data. Is this clear, guys? These two are not having any relationship, but by using the concept of services, we are able to pass the data from one component to other component. So how are we doing that? You create a variable, basically a property. You can reuse functions as well as you can create some properties, and those property values can be accessed by multiple components. And when through one component, if you change that data can be accessed. That means the change can be seen in the other components as well. Is that clear, guys? Is this
Yes.
clear? Yes. But it has a problem. What is the problem? I'll add, and you are getting it here. Good. So you can see the change in header components, you can see the change in content component as well. But what if I want to notify my content component that there is a change? So when there is a change in header component, I want to notify which component? Content component, so that content component can respond. Very simple example, guys. We will see this in our right? Gmail, typical Gmail as well, right? Or if you see here, now this is the data, right? This is the data. Now if I say shared with me, when this is changed, content changes. That is basically they use something called as routing. Imagine that you are developing an application where you have a drop down list. In the drop down list, I select a country. Now when I select a country, in the table, let us assume that you are displaying the list of employees who are presented in that particular country. Now that drop down list is in one component and the table where you are displaying the list of employees is in a different component. Now when there is a change in the drop down list of component 1, component 2 should do some work, right? What work? It should take the selected department or selected country, go and get the list of employees who belongs to that country. So you change some data in component 1, component 2 should react to that change. Is my requirement clear? Here what is happening is I am making some change to my service data and the other component is able to get the change. But what if other component wants to react? Is it clear, guys? Other component
नको.
Sorry, can you repeat?
You have two components, component 1 and component 2. Component 1, right, has some drop down list. And when I change the value of the drop down list, component 2 wants to respond to that change. What do I mean by respond? They want to execute some code where they take the value of component 1 drop down list, go to the database or call some API, get the data. So here you have a requirement. This is important. Every application needs this. You have component 1 and you have component 2 and maybe multiple components to that matter. Now user does some activity in component 1. Who wants to respond to that? Who wants to respond to that event? There is a change in the drop-down list value. If there is a change in the drop-down list value of component 1, component 2 should get that change and maybe it may call some API, get the data and show it to the user. So this will trigger an event and who has to respond to that event? Who has to respond to that event, guys?
The other component.
The other component. But now requirement, our question is how this component can communicate. Again, as usual, you will use some service, but here the problem is not as a property. If you create a property, you can push the value and this can get the value, but it cannot respond, it cannot execute some code whenever there is a change in the value. Now our requirement is there is a variable in this component, means in this service, component 1 will change the value of that service, that means service property, and who will respond to that service change? Component 2.
Yes.
So here what we want to do is we want to respond. What do I mean by respond? Execute some code. That is what we basically call it as what?
Observable.
Right? So you want to respond to that event. Right? So how do we handle that is, by making use of something called as subjects, guys. So how do we handle that is by using something called as what? Subjects. So we will take a break for 5 minutes. It's a small break. So we'll take a break for 5 minutes, and once we are back, so we will see how we can address that problem.